she doesn't forgive, and she never forgets. Welcome to episode 24 of the Horror Headquarters Nightlings. If you're tuning in for the very first time, we invite you to become part of the Nightlings family by hitting that follow button. If you're a returning listener, midnight hour has approached and you've come just on time. Today I'm going to be discussing a film that I watched over the weekend that I've been putting off for over 10 years. That film is The Woman in Black. And you guys might be wondering, why have I been putting it off for 10 years? Well, first of all, 10 years ago, I was not into horror, and it scared the bejeebers out of me. But I always found myself coming back to watch this specific trailer. I'm not sure why, it's really weird. I just got a really interesting energy from it, but I always recall rewatching this trailer like maybe once a year, thinking I'm gonna watch it, and then I never do. But I finally pulled the plug, and I'm excited to start diving into this film with you guys and letting you know my thought process and what my comments are on this film. So get ready. Sit back, go get a snack, sit down, I don't know, whatever you're doing, go for a jog and listen to this. It'll definitely get your heart pumping for sure. Now, just a quick synopsis on the film. It was released in 2012. It's called The Woman in Black. It's PG-13. It's categorized as horror/mystery. It's an hour and 35 minutes long. And the synopsis is Arthur Kipps, played by Daniel Radcliffe, a lawyer, is recently widowed and grieving the loss of his wife when he is sent to a remote village to put a deceased eccentric's affairs into order. Soon after his arrival, it becomes clear that the villagers are hiding a terrible secret. Kipps discovers that his late client's house is haunted by the spirit of a woman who is trying to find someone and something she lost, and that no one, not even the children, is safe from her terrible wrath. Now, this film costed about $17 million to make, and it made $129 million at the box office. That is a phenomenal turnaround for people that don't know how to do math. That's about 5-6 times the profit of what they put in. That's very, very, very good. And the fact that they only used 17 million, I was kind of surprised. But they didn't really have a lot of special effects, nothing crazy, no horrific music or large sets to like create the film. I think it was mostly based in London, obviously, or somewhere in the UK, because there's no way that where they filmed this was in the United States. Alright, I just checked IMDb, and thank God I was correct, because it was all filmed in England, obviously in different areas. Like, it says where the Eel Marsh house was, where the train station was, where all the exterior scenes. The studio was also in England, so I was correct. Thank God this wasn't filmed in the US, because I'm like, if there's a place that looks like this in the US and I don't know about it, what's wrong with me? Now, with all that being said, the film did get some pretty mixed reviews. It had 66% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 54% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, with a 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, and that's over 100,000 reviews. So I think people are just mixed on it because, I mean, obviously today we're used to very gory horror, very violent, it's always swearing. There's also no profanity that I can recall. I don't know why I had a lisp when I said that. No profanity in this film. I don't even know what just happened. Which is hence probably why a lot of people didn't cater to it, because, I mean, obviously today in people's generation, they like seeing films that are swearing a lot, that have a lot of gore, a lot of inappropriate scenes. There was also no sex or nudity in this film, which is probably why it had a PG-13 rating, because if it's rated R, it either has really gory scenes, very horrific scenes, or it has an inappropriate scene incorporated into it. But this one had neither. So I think a 6.4 out of 10 for this type of horror film from 2012 is actually pretty good. Because if this film were released today, I do not think it would get a 6.4. It'd probably get like a 3 out of 10. Because people forgot how horror films are supposed to be done, or one way horror films can be done. And they're more used to like the suspenseful, gory stuff today. Now, I just want to say I apologize in advance if this episode is all over the place, because this movie was very hard to follow in the beginning, and I was like very confused as to what was happening, but it quickly made a lot of sense and I started following it a little bit better. But I just want to start off with that beginning scene. Like, if you haven't watched the film, I would pause this, go watch it. It's, I believe, on Sling and it's on Paramount, or you can rent it for like $4. But it was really good. That opening scene was phenomenal. The three, I don't know if they were kids. I think they were kids. They weren't orphans. They like jumped out of a window because they saw the woman in black and they killed themselves. And I just thought how it was done was like amazing. And when I like saw them like look possessed in a way and they like broke the dolls they were using, I'm like, oh, oof, man, okay, take a breather right now. It was just a lot going on, but I loved it. It was really interesting to see, and I thought that was a great way to start off the film. And just like the screaming from the mother, because like she saw all three of them dead, gut wrenching, but so good. But I just wanted to start off with that, and then the fact that that's where Daniel Radcliffe's character ends up staying when he goes and visits this town. I'm like, interesting. Now, I think it's really easy to look at a film like this and think that it's not scary or suspenseful, but this movie for me fell in a completely different category than a lot of other horror films out there. It's very classical, very historic, and it's a slow burning, suspenseful, like thriller film. But it does have some history to it. Because, like, I love the costuming, especially. It's very period based in Victorian England, and I love old fashioned horror like that. It's just so good. Hence why I also like The Nun, because it was like based in like the 1920s or 40s. I'm like blanking on the time frame right now. I'm probably gonna get attacked in the comments for that. But that's why I like that kind of stuff. And the costuming, can we just take a moment to talk about the costuming? It was so good. I loved all the different outfits and everything. But I wish that Daniel Radcliffe's character Arthur had more than one outfit. I was like waiting for him to have a costume change. I'm like, where the hell is it? He's wearing the same thing for 4 days. Is he that poor? I mean, maybe he was, but like he had a maid. So maybe it was just me, but I loved the costuming nevertheless, and I loved the layout of the film. It was so good with like the candles and all the different buildings and architecture. Oh, amazing. Flawless. I love that kind of stuff. Now let's get to the acting. Now a lot of people that watch this film didn't like the acting as much. They thought it was bland, boring. I liked how the acting wasn't over exaggerated and it felt really real at times because like in horror films today, you can tell when something bad's about to happen typically because like of someone's face, of their facial reactions, of their behavior in the beginning of the film. But Daniel Radcliffe had like this dead face, like he had a poker face. It was always the same. If something horrible happened, like he wouldn't even shed a tear. It was just very basic, but I wasn't upset at it for some reason. It was really interesting and weird. But can we talk about also how everyone in the town was staring at Arthur, even like before someone died? Like as soon as he's entering the town for the first time, everyone's giving him a dirty look. Everyone's like, "Get inside, close the door." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Does this person look like the woman in black? Like, what's going on?" It was just really interesting, and that answer still wasn't given to me even at the end of the film. Like, obviously, as soon as he arrives, a bunch of people started dying, but why were they staring at him before that all that happened? It was just really interesting to me. But like, for example, the man at the motel that he was supposed to be staying at that his company was supposed to reserve for, he's like, I don't see your name, we don't have any rooms. And he was like so rude. And for him to like to suggest the attic for his stay had me curious as to what was up there. He's like, why don't you stay in the attic? And like everyone got quiet and it just made me curious as to what was up there. I'm like, okay, what's in the attic? Why are people afraid of it? And as soon as the door opened and I saw the three windows, I froze. I'm like, oh, he wants him to stay where the three girls committed suicide before they died. Yeah, why not? That's an amazing place for him to stay. Now, I could be the only one on this, but I was hoping for something like really scary to happen while he was in that room, being the caliber of what happened in there, but I was mistaken. It was just basic room. He went to sleep, he woke up, and he was out. I'm like, alright, you could have had some kind of horror aspect. I mean, they did have like the broken like dolls and everything, and like they all looked really bad and like overused, I guess you could say. So I guess that's something, but I was like waiting for something scary to happen. Oh, that's not completely a bad thing though, because I like films that are unpredictable. Because I was predicting something to happen, but it didn't. So it kind of made me think, okay, this film is going to be very unpredictable. It's going to be very different than a lot of the other horror films out there. And I was open to it, and I ended up enjoying it a lot. Now, to be fair, the film is PG-13, so they can't incorporate that much of like a horror aspect to it at that ranking. If it was rated R and it was like the level of suspense that it was in this film, it wouldn't have made any sense at all. Because there were some pretty gory deaths. I mean, there's one girl that burns herself to death because she sees the woman in black. There's another that coughs up blood because she drank something that she wasn't supposed to. But like there were many of the scares that were just weren't jump scare worthy. And that's totally okay. Like I was expecting to be much more disappointed, but I wasn't. And it's probably because I loved the movie itself and it was very good and I enjoyed the script and the setting, all the different colors, all dark tone, nothing like very overly bright or happy. It was more like depressing and sad tones that were given to that camera aspect and the film aspect. Now, believe me when I say that there's films that have predictable scares and were beyond boring, and the character development was dead. Like Buried in the Ground, 6 Feet Under. I won't get too much into it, but mm, so many of them. Maybe I'll discuss those in a future episode, but one example is Halloween Ends. That film was just so. I can't even say it. I can't even say it. But I can't even call that a horror film to even start, because. But that's all I'll say for now on the topic, at least. Now, as a film guru that has taken a bunch of film classes and learned about architecture in films, especially horror films, I adored the small touches incorporated into this film. For example, the hallway scenes in the mansion. Now, for those that don't know, the reason that these scenes are so popular is because they add so much intensity, fear, and curiosity as to what's on the other side. It's like what's gonna happen because it's a narrow airway, but it has so much potential for opportunity to take place. And another example of this happening is in The Nun, because we have Valak coming down the hallway, and it's like a very horrific scene. All the lights are turning off, and it gets more and more intense, and then it steals fear, and the person on the other side of the hallway is scared because they don't know what to do, how to react. So it just builds this level of intensity, and it's so beautifully well done when done properly. And it's just overall one of my favorite things to incorporate into a horror film. It's literally a gold mine in a horror film. You want a good horror film? Incorporate a hallway scene into it and make it suspenseful and make it properly, and you will be golden. Now, getting back to the hallway scene in The Woman in Black, I really liked this one because it was like no other horror film I've watched, and I really do mean that. Because every time he would either walk down the hallway or look down it, there wouldn't be anything, and I was expecting to see something at the other side, like in the beginning of the film, but I didn't, which is another example of the film not being predictable. But towards the end of the film, he would start seeing things, and it was a slow burning film, as I said in the beginning, and it would start to get creepier and creepier and creepier, and then at the end, where he finds the son of the woman that's the woman in black, like he finds her son's body in like the mud, he carries it to the house, puts it in his bedroom, and like he's waiting for something to happen, like he has all the toys set up, everything. There's a bunch of creepy toys. Let me just get to that. There was a bunch of really creepy dolls and toys that would make music, kind of like in The Conjuring. And he turned them all on, and nothing happened. And then the rocking chair started going back and forth rapidly. It also did this in like the middle of the film, but there wasn't any immediate reason as to why that happened. Like nothing came out of it. But then at the end, when the rocking chair happened, he knew something was going on, and he started looking down the hallway. And heaven behold, it was the woman in black. And she was walking very slowly. Lights started dimming, which such an amazing example. And that makes me think that maybe the nun took some inspiration from that hallway scene because, like I said, as the woman in black was approaching, the lights are getting dim, everything is turning off, all the candles are going off. and there's like really slow, there's not like crazy music happening either, but Arthur is like slowly looking over the hallway waiting for something to happen, and then the lady in black just comes in screaming bloody murder, looks at her son, and then escapes screaming as well. I'm like, okay, you do you, but like that's creepy as hell. But it just made me love the film so much more as a whole because they didn't overdo anything, nothing was predictable, and I enjoyed it. Now, I have a question for those that have watched the movie. Did anyone else notice that there's so many Easter eggs in this film, from like start to finish? I mean, one example is when Arthur's son draws a picture of him and his dad, like with a train in the picture, and then at the end, spoiler alert, that's how they die, is they get run over by a train. And then also the lady that plays Mrs. Daly in the film. Long story short, she lost her son and she was devastated by it, so she has like two dogs that she treats as children, but she believes in the spiritual world, and she was drawing a message one time at like a cemetery, like very fast and like in a very angry way, and she was drawing it on the side of a cemetery stone, or like where a cemetery is, like on one of the pillars, and she's drawing something, and then it ends up being the picture that his son drew in the beginning of the film, which was him with his dad at the train. I'm like, oh, that's how he's gonna die, something's gonna happen. I'm like, this has to mean something. Also, that actress that played Miss Daly, her name is Janet McTeer. Phenomenal actress. I just have to put that out there. She was so freaking good. Her ability to go from level to level, like she would be completely fine at one moment, and then she would like go psychotic and start doing really crazy shit. I'm like, whoa, that is called really good acting right there. It's so freaking good. I also thought the birthday card idea was genius. It was such a good idea. If you guys haven't watched the film, you won't know what I'm talking about. But basically, the woman in black, when she was alive, she used to write birthday cards to her son that she could never see. And the lady that was responsible for the child, being that she had to give up, the woman in black had to give up her child to her, would never give them to him. And she knew that she was doing this, so she would write all these angry letters to her, and that's where the I will never forgive, never forget, because like he ended up dying, and she blamed it on the family. And she said, I will never forgive, never forget. You didn't even attempt to save my son. You guys are never gonna forgive this. And like she was gonna have a vengeance back at them. And I thought it was really nice of Arthur, who's played by Daniel Radcliffe. I know, like I said, this episode's gonna be all over the place, but when he took all the birthday cards that he found, placed them along the dead body of her son before she came and took him, it was kind of a moment of like full circle, I guess you could say, or at least I thought it was full circle, but it wasn't, because he thought that she would finally go away if he did all this stuff, but she remained. He thought she was gone. He went to see his son, everything's fine, and then he's like reuniting with his son and everything, and they want to book tickets back to London and they want to leave, and then echoes, and the son sees something, and he's at the train tracks, and he starts walking towards the train tracks. He goes on the train tracks, and he's walking towards an approaching train. Arthur sees him, jumps into the pit, tries saving his son, but they both get run over. And you'd think it'd be a sad ending, but it was really cute because then like they both got up and like they're looking around. I'm like, oh, there's no one there. They died. Oh, I was like praying that they lived or something, or that they like collapsed to the bottom of the train tracks and the train just went over them and somehow they were still alive. But they get up and they see their mother and his wife, because she died during childbirth. That's a whole other thing. That's why he was like very depressed and why he's trying to get work so he can make money so that he can provide for his son. But it was really cute. Like they get up and the boy's like, Dad, who's that? And they turn around and he's like, that's your mother. I'm like, oh my god, thank god. I thought it was the woman in black that was gonna like accept them to hell or something. But it's interesting because the woman in black, she was doing this to get revenge on anyone that messed with her. And I guess you could say that, and it went opposite for her. And she was miserable, and like at the end she sees them happy, even though she wasn't expecting that to happen. And she looks so mad, and then she looks to the camera and then blackout. No, just a collection of my final thoughts. I think overall the film was very good. I think it was definitely ahead of its time. I think it's very underrated, and I would definitely watch it again, whether it's by myself or with another person, because I feel like there's so much more depth to this film that the more you watch it, the more you see more Easter eggs, the more you enjoy it, the more suspenseful it gets, the more the history makes sense, the more you fall in love with the architecture and the outfits and the makeup. All of it was just flawless, and I really enjoyed that aspect to it, as well as some of the acting from it. Now, I can't say this is Daniel Radcliffe's best performance because he was pretty much a deadbeat throughout the film. I mean, take that as you may. He wasn't horrible. I'm not saying he was horrible, but not a lot of emotion showed from him. And I typically enjoy actors that can do more emotion in roles like this, but I don't know if I blame him or the director for that. But there were some really good actors and actresses in this film, especially Mrs. Daly. She was phenomenal. I mean, you already heard my spiel on it. But if I had to give this film a rating, I think I would give it a solid 7 or 8 out of 10. And I'm leaning towards like a 7. And the reason being is because it obviously wasn't as suspenseful as I thought. You know what? I'm gonna give it an 8. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 because I can't blame that, because I was going back to like all the horror films that I've watched because they all have gore in it and violence and they're much more scary and terrifying. But I have to remind myself that this is mostly a mystery, and hence that's why I want to watch it again, because I want to learn more about it, and I also want to read the book. There's a book for this. This is literally based on a book, and there's also a play about it, which is very interesting as well. So I'll be looking into both of those because I have been getting more into the reading aspect of books because I used to hate books as a kid, but that's a whole completely other story. I keep going into little spiels, but those are my thoughts in like a contained jar. I can go on and on, but I think it was a great film. I don't think it was horrible like so many other films, because so many people hated this one for some reason, hence why I said it had mixed reviews. But I think if you're alone or with family and don't have a film to watch and it's not too scary and it has some really cool historical aspects to it and the costuming is great, and someone that doesn't really like horror per se, I think you'll like this one. Even for horror fans, I think you guys will like a different change of pace like this movie. All right, it is now time for the poll results from last week. I don't know why I'm laughing. I just watched a funny video, I'm sorry. So the question was, do you think foul play is involved? And this was regarding the Kansas City 3 episode that I did last week about a true crime story that's happening right now as we speak. If you guys don't know about it, you can go listen to the episode. It's literally right before this episode. It's very good, and I think it'll help you educate you a little bit on the whole situation if you're interested. But this is the poll from last week, and 39% of you voted absolutely. 33% of you put something in the Q&A, which I will get to in a little bit. 17% of you guys said that they died from the cold, and 11% said no. So it's pretty much leaning forward towards like most of you guys thinking that the person actually did it and that there was foul play involved, and then some of you guys, like the minority, think that he had nothing to do with it. But I mean, we'll never find out until obviously the toxicology releases. But I don't know, I think he's hiding something. Personally, I think he's hiding something. Now the Q&A, I had a couple responses. Someone said, no doubt in my mind that he was somehow involved. Please make a follow-up episode as to what happened when toxicology services. I will definitely do that. Thank you for your comment, Artemis. Another one said he has to have done it. Who has noise canceling headphones in for 2 days straight and sleeps through both days and then magically appears when police arrive. That's very true. I never thought about it that way. That's by Harrison Field. Thank you, Harrison. Someone else said he absolutely did it. How do 3 friends end up dead on your property? That's coincidence? Yeah, I don't think so. That is by J3H7. It's like a very long username. Put a title on your name, please. I would love to know who said that. Or just put it at the end of your comments if you don't have really a username. Someone else said, regardless, I think it's just absolutely devastating that all three men died alone and their friend inside was apparently blind to it. That is from Nicole. I agree with that. It is really sad. I can't imagine the situation that those three families and friends that like knew those three people, what they're going through right now. It has to be really tough, especially waiting this long for the autopsy and toxicology reports to come out and feeling like the police aren't doing as much as they should. So I empathize with them a lot, and I'm hoping that we get a result sooner than later. But thank you to everyone who participated in the poll and in the Q&A on Spotify. There is one under this episode, so make sure to participate in that. Give it a vote, give it a Q&A, I don't know. Put something in the comments, say hello to me, and I'll say hello back, who knows. Message me on Instagram, and I'll say hello back. Let me know what you thought of the episode, and I will message you back, whatever it may be. We've ran out of ink, Nightlings. This is the end of episode 24 of the Horror Headquarters. Thank you guys so much for listening and participating in the Q&A, as well as the poll results on the previous episode, and just for supporting this podcast as a whole. I truly wouldn't be here without you guys' support and love on all my social media and just for lifting me up. If you guys are new here and you guys really enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that follow button wherever you're listening to this on and rating us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I greatly appreciate it, and it truly does make the biggest difference. And if you have any feedback at all, please drop it in the Q&A. Send me a voice message. All of this is in the description. Even if you're not on Spotify, you can still send me a voice message, and I would love to hear it. And I still haven't received one, so I'm like waiting for whoever the first one's gonna be, and who knows, I might air it on the podcast episode whenever I receive it. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Horror Headquarters, on Twitter at The Horror HQ, on TikTok at The Horror Headquarters, and to subscribe to our email newsletter at The Horror Headquarters website, which is all linked down below so you guys don't have to go searching up for it. It's all in the description, and if you sign up for the newsletter, you guys should be receiving my weekly emails about what I'm planning on talking about, a bunch of other things that I'm doing behind the scenes, all these secret little things that only people that are part of the newsletter, that are part of the Nightlings Club, would know about. So thank you guys again so much. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I loved talking about The Woman in Black. I think it's truly a very underrated horror film that deserves so much more recognition. And even though it falls short in some places, it lives up to it in its potential in so many other ways. So that's it for the episode. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. And if you're on the email newsletter, keep an eye out. I have something planned. I have something coming up that is definitely going to make you guys very excited and pumped, or at least I'm hoping it will. But until next time, tread very lightly and pray for forgiveness. The woman in black has departed, and midnight hour is approaching.